What have you been playing? Let's start with you this time. I always start. What have you been playing?
Sure. There's a game that I've been playing for the last couple of weeks called Too Many Bones. Too Many Bones is a game by Josh and Adam Carlson. The artists are Josh Carlson and Anthony Litorno. Litorno? Yeah, Litorno. Publisher is Chip Theory Games. This is a game that Chip Theory, as you can imagine, uses poker chips or chips as kind of a main component for their board games. And in this case as well, dice. So dice is a real primary component of this game, which in fact is called a Dice Builder RPG. And I'll explain here in just a little moment as far as what this all consists of, because, yeah, dice, chips, it's very, very component heavy. But there's a lot to be said, and there's a lot of accolade behind it too, which I want to be able to explore and talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So in Too Many Bones, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be picking a character. And what's cool about, I guess, again, talking about components, is that these characters are kind of your Gloomhaven non-traditional character archetypes. So for instance, like you have your tank, you have like your soldier, your warrior, you have like your ranger, your bowman guy or whatever. Then you have like more of an agile thief person and a wizard person, right? So games like Gloomhaven and games like Too Many Bones take those archetypes and they kind of mold them into character classes that you can pick in this game that are kind of more elfish like and have like bits and pieces of one thing, but they're not really that. They're actually specific names in this instance. So in Too Many Bones, like there is a quote unquote, like, I don't know, strengthy warrior guy called Pickett. And he just has like this big shield that is like 75% his size, and he has like a little sword and can do a bunch of cool abilities. There's another one called Boomer, and Boomer is like more of an agile ranged character, but she actually crafts bombs. So you like end up getting a bunch of dice, you get materials, you craft bombs, and you can use them in battle. And also these player mats are neoprene. So like think of the think of the consistency of a mouse pad. That's about kind of what these are. And if you get into if you got into the Kickstarter recently for Undertow, which is the standalone expansion, they actually double stitched them, so they're a little bit thicker and a little bit nicer. So that's kind of nice. Yeah. So you pick one and you get a bunch of dice, like all custom dice. And what you end up doing is you build this encounters deck, and each encounter basically guides you on this quest as far as like which specific big boss you're going to go ahead and fight. And again, everything, your characters, your health, the enemies, they're all poker chips, and they range from kind of cheapish plastic to the health ones to like full on like good solid. I don't know if they're necessarily clay or not, but they're a good heavy hard plastic, I would say, maybe even clay. And you have then this neoprene kind of board with 4 rows of 4 or 4 rows of 5 different like circle spaces. And as you start fighting monsters, you kind of have this arena or this battlefield where melee characters kind of go on the front lines and range characters kind of go in the back. And you're having to, then place your characters out, do some little movements, and roll dice to see whether or not you take damage, whether you do damage, etc., etc. My friend and I got through, I would say probably, we got to the final, like the final encounter, and we lost. And it took us a solid, let's see, that Sunday, I had bought like $140 worth of this stuff. This included all of Too Many Bones. This included all of Undertow. So we got a really phenomenal deal out of the gate. So he and I actually got into it together, and we sorted everything out. And then from that point, so maybe it took like an hour to sort everything out and component check everything. Then we started actually going through the base game, and it took us 2.5, maybe 2.5 hours from page one, like literally knowing nothing about how this game worked, to actually getting to the point where we're like, okay, we lost, to have a full understanding about, how this worked. Yeah. It didn't go smoothly. It was very difficult to, I think, understand the game, how it worked, and making sure you're doing everything right. There were a lot of nuances. The rule book was okay. It wasn't bad. but it was hard, just in terms of how everything was built, or laid out rather. But there's something to be had. There was something to be had when the game had its stride. There was a uniqueness about it that I think, where I kind of understood the hype behind it. Jumping back a little bit, part of which, when it talks about these neoprene mats and these dice that you put out in these little squares, is that it acts kind of like a talent tree. So what ends up happening is, like, once you complete these encounters, you gain points that you can invest into different stats, or you could invest into your talent tree, and you can only follow it in a case where, like, you start, like, by looking at your calendar. You look at your character sheet and you say, okay, I start with this many dice, and then from there, if you want to upgrade down a certain path, you have to follow the arrow, so you can't, like, skip anything. So it kind of thematically works that way, like a video game, where if you're playing something with a skill tree, you can kind of, you have to kind of get the amount of points that you need to then boost at the next level, etc., and then you use those in battle. Attacking, again, works where it's just like each one of them has, like, a unique ability. You roll X amount of dice plus attacking, defending, what have you. You roll them, you compare dice. It's relatively straightforward in that instance. If you get knocked out, there's different things as well too, blah blah blah. In essence, again, I think it really does play well to the fact that it is a dice builder RPG. There's some cool stuff behind it, some great theory behind it. Component quality is excellent. I really want to get back into it. The graphic design for it is a little bit poor, in my opinion. I just don't think that there is there's something about it that seems a little bit amateurish, and this is from me as a gamer who hasn't graphic designed anything his entire life to say this, so take it with a grain of salt. I think it will rub people the right way. For me, I felt like I wanted a little bit more of an adult themed to it versus kind of it being a little bit more illustrated and fantasy. It just, there's something about it that doesn't jive with me. But I would say that it works really well. Like, the dice iconography just doesn't look thematic. It just kind of looks like, it kind of looked like it went through, like, an iterative process and they stopped, where I felt like it could have gone a few iterations and had a little bit more of an impact. What's also interesting too is that, again, we have Too Many Bones, the base game, and the expansion of Undertow. Too Many Bones comes in a huge box.
Yeah, it's huge,
it's
right?
Huge.
Like,
it's huge.
Half Gloomhaven size, full Gloomhaven size.
Half Gloomhaven size, I would say.
Okay. Yeah,
and
huge.
And then they certainly, I think, did a great number in terms of Undertow with cutting it down to what you need to have to play. I think there's just because there's a breadth of different enemies that exist in the base game versus Undertow, which is why they could probably make it a little bit more form-fitting. But there's just a lot of space in that box. Yeah. In essence, I would say that coming out of the game, positive. Really want to get back into it. Really want to try to see if we can start a campaign, get through more of those encounters, and see how long of legs it has. Yeah, I would say if you're on the fence, check it out. Get it on, finding it for full price though, like for all that, like that was like $290, not including shipping that they paid originally for it. I again got it for like $140 for all of it.
Yeah.
So
all right.
Yeah. Too Many Bones.
Okay. There was the campaign element, and this first time you playing, is it just a one shot, or did you actually start a campaign?
This was just a one shot thing.
It's just one shot.
Yeah.
Now in the campaign, do all of your stats in your text tree, does that stay persistent to the next one, or are you kind of starting from scratch?
No idea. There was mention about a campaign. I don't know how that all flows through. We didn't get to that point. Right. I think we just really wanted to see how the game functions mechanically, and really see what the hype was behind it, because it's like ranked 230-ish in Board Game Geek right now. It's really high up there.
Well, that's quick.
So I really wanted to understand, like, how does, this game has some accolade behind it. Let's see what's behind it. So, yeah.
So on the one shot, did you feel like you leveled up enough where you were fulfilled at the level you became by the end of it?
Kind of. So as Boomer, I crafted grenade stuff, which meant that there were like these there was 3 different dice that refer to different components that you rolled and you picked up on the battlefield. And what you can do is when you roll them, you can basically equip them or have them locked, or you can just re-roll them for next time your turn comes up for a better value, or you can modify the roll, I would imagine, in certain cases. And then you would start spending those components to craft grenades, which are kind of the skills that you can spend your points on through every encounter that you pass, to get new ones. And those grenades, though, are like heavy hitting. Like when you get a grenade, like it does something really special, cool, and unique, and it like does some serious damage, versus it just being like a little piddly grenade that does something. So that, you know, you do immediately kind of going in feeling like, okay, I'm crafting something that's going to make a huge impact. As far as the other player, I mean, I was really concentrated on my side. I can't really recall how my friend felt because he played more of the melee class. But I mean, he was pretty powerful too, at least with the kind of like the standard encounter mobs that we faced. The boss was insanely hard. We realized that there's a point in which you can access the boss if you obtain a certain amount of like kind of points to get to, you know, activate him. But at that point, you're still fairly weak. We would have thought we would have probably wanted to have a couple more encounter cards come up to buff our characters more to have a fighting chance, because like there was this. Like, how he ended up doing it was like he was this troll that could knock us back and forth in the battlefield. And we could also only go in with one character at a time. So there was no way for me to be able to come in and like do any type of stuns. So yeah, he was just basically wailing my friend back and forth, and we were like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to do any damage. He was a tough one. So we wanted to, like I said, going in, you want to make sure that like you want to maybe grind out an extra encounter card or two before going in there.
Okay, that's interesting. The reason I was asking is because for a campaign game like this where you are leveling up your character, there's kind of two sides to this for me. So if you have one side like an Imperial Assault where you're playing the Star Wars campaign and your character starts with very little, but by the end of the campaign you're all beefed up with all your weapons and you carry those over. But on the other side you have Mechs versus Minions campaign where your figure starts completely blank every single time, and I hated that. Like honestly, that's probably one of the biggest setbacks I had for Mechs versus Minions for myself. And so I'm just wondering how persistent the things are, because honestly, this game fascinates me, and I'm really interested in it.
Yep.
But I think with a campaign game like this, I just want to know if it's worth the investment. If you feel like you are gaining enough items and being strong enough at the beginning of your next session, and you feel like you are actually becoming stronger as it goes.
Sure.
So I'll be interested to see how that works as a campaign.
Yeah, indeed. To be honest with you, thinking about this now, I think it is meant to kind of be like you have to choose a certain monster to fight. I mean, you could probably do it like you could maybe set up this, and this and have some sort of carryover system, but it really kind of felt like it was encapsulated in a one game session, because like at some point in time, like through the skill tree that you end up having, like it does, like if you have everything out, I think you might be a little bit OP. So it does choose you to pick and choose which tree you want to go in, and you maybe want to choose that based upon which boss you're fighting, because you can see everything what that boss does, or at least kind of what you're expected to do to fight him or her, what have you. And that's kind of what makes you pick and choose. So it's fairly, I think, easy to, in a campaign game, to probably fill out your board in that case. So I would say in that instance, you're looking at more of an isolated experience versus a carryover experience, I would say.
I see. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, that sounds interesting. That's Too Many Bones.
So many by Chip Theory Games.
It's not just one or two. Honestly, I think it's a little too many.
Several
it's
many
too
bones.
many. Yeah, several many bones.